welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
You send us sources, we pull out the really crucial insights for you. Stuff that actually sticks,
Yeah.
Without all the fluff. It's just about getting you genuinely informed, but, well, efficiently.
And today we're heading way back. We're diving into some excerpts from a Sanskrit text. It's called Adwait Brahm.
Right, yeah, definitely not your average read. Adwait Brahm.
Yeah.
It sounds like it tackles the really big questions, doesn't it? Like, where did everything come from?
Exactly. What keeps it all running? And, what is the ultimate reality? This idea of Brahman.
Okay, so quite profound stuff.
Definitely. It's packed with ideas. Our mission today really is just to unpack some of the core concepts, make them clear, meaningful for you. It doesn't matter if you've studied this before or if it's all totally new.
So get ready for maybe a different perspective, a look into some seriously ancient wisdom. Okay, so where do we start? The text kicks off with this thing called Urdhvamula. What's the core idea there?
Urdhvamula. Yeah, it literally translates as upward root. Think of a tree, right? But instead of the roots going down into the earth...
They go up.
Exactly. They point upwards. That's the picture the text uses for the universe.
An upside-down tree.
Huh.
Wow, that's quite an image. So the root isn't grounded like we normally think of it.
Precisely. In this context, root means the fundamental cause. The source, the principle that sustains everything. And that upward bit is really key.
How so?
Well, it suggests a source that's maybe not obvious, not materially based in the way we usually expect. It's transcendent, perhaps.
Okay. And the text gives interpretations for this. I think you mentioned this sage Yaska.
That's right. Yaska is quoted. He says, Urdhvamudpavam havati. Basically, it's born from intensity or supreme effort. And also, Urdhvamuchisthata bhavati, meaning it's established after supreme effort.
So it's upward root. It takes immense force, immense energy to bring it into being. Interesting. What about the mula, the root part itself? What does that signify here?
The text explains mula, the root, as something you can detach from its base, something that stays hidden, usually. And yet it contains the essence of the whole thing, like a tree root, You can dig it up, it's underground, but it holds the life of the tree.
Right, okay. Cosmic version of that. So what does Adwait Brahm actually say is this upward root of everything?
It points to Prakriti. That's a fundamental primordial substance. And ultimately it points to Brahman itself. And it emphasizes that this root, this cause, it isn't static. It's brought forth through intense activity, intense dynamism.
Makes you think, doesn't it? The very fabric of reality born from action. Okay, so from this root, the text talks about a Vaiśākha, branches extending everywhere. Sounds like the sheer vastness of reality.
Exactly that. The universe as this tree with shaka branches spreading out in all directions, avakasha. It's amazing when you think about the scale of the cosmos we know now. And this ancient text already had this image of, well, all-encompassing expanse.
What about the word itself? Avakasha, does the etymology tell us anything?
It does, actually. It combines afa, which sort of means to hold or grasp, with a root about movement pervasiveness. So it suggests something that both contains reality and flows throughout it. It's like all-pervading space or expanse.
And these avakashaka, these branches, what do they represent specifically?
Basically, all the diverse manifestations. Everything. From the tiniest, most subtle particles, the text calls them sukshma.
Subtle particles, cosmic rays.
Yes, exactly. All that, right up to the immense lokalokantara, the realms and sort of interrealms in space. It's a really comprehensive view.
So how are all these different parts, these branches, connected back to that upward root?
Well, they're all interconnected. Yeah. And they're regulated by the mula prakriti, the fundamental prakriti, or, Brahman. And the connection is through the primordial sound,
Okay.
Yeah. The text really emphasizes that every single aspect of creation, from the subtle sukshma to the gross stula, it's all intertwined with prakriti and governed by Brahman, like a cosmic web holding it all.
It paints a picture of a universe that's, well, deeply connected. Ordered, maybe.
Absolutely. There's this inherent order and constant movement. The text even mentions subtle sounds emanating from every element. And what's really interesting is the idea that Brahman gives knowledge-filled motion, gati, and strength, bala, even to inert substances, jada padartha, through these om vibrations.
So even seemingly dead matter has this dynamism from the source.
That's the idea, driven by this fundamental energy.
Okay, right. Upward root, branches everywhere. Now, the text brings in Ashvatha and Sanatana. This sounds like it's about permanence and impermanence existing together. Is that right?
That's a great way to put it, yeah. The manifest universe, the one we see, is described as Ashvatha. And this term, well, it has two key interpretations, and they seem a bit contradictory at first.
Okay, tell me, what are they?
First interpretation is Naiṣṭhika, meaning that which does not remain until tomorrow.
So perishable, fleeting.
Exactly. It highlights the Chana Bangura nature, the momentary, perishable quality of everything created. The text is quite clear. Anything in the manifest universe is anicca, impermanent. It's not eternally indestructible in the form we see it. Constant change.
Everything we experience is ultimately temporary.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the second meaning of Ashvatha?
The second one is Ashvasthita, meaning situated in power or in strength. And here, Ashva is linked to Indra. You find this in older texts like the Rig Veda.
Indra, the deity.
Well, yes, but in this context, Indra represents something more. It represents the power of Brahman, the ultimate sustainer of creation.
So Brahman, acting as this power, Indra.
Yeah.
That's what underpins the universe.
Precisely. The text calls Brahman the Mulakarka, the root doer, the fundamental agent behind all creative activity. It even mentions sages like Yaska and Yajnavalkya who saw Indra as the source, the lord of strength. Basically, Indra becomes another name for Brahman's active power.
Okay. How does that power connect back to the impermanence ideal we just talked about? They still seem a bit opposed.
Right. Well, the text explains it through cycles. During Mahapralaya, the great dissolution, the supreme self, Paramatma, isn't actively sustaining things in the manifest way. So Prakriti's qualities become quiescent, calm, but when that sustaining power becomes active again, Brahman manifests as Indra, creating and upholding the universe within itself. So it's a cycle. Potential, then manifestation.
The cosmic rhythm.
Yeah.
And ebb and flow. Okay, now what about Sanatana? You said the text calls this impermanent universe Sanatana, eternal or ancient. That really sounds like a contradiction.
It does on the surface, but there's a clarification. Sanos in here doesn't mean the specific universe, as we see it now, is absolutely without beginning or end. Instead, it refers to the pravaha, the flow, the anati, beginningless, and anatta, endless, cycle of creation and dissolution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like a river. The water always changes, but the river itself, the flow, endures.
Exactly like that. It's the process that's eternal, not necessarily the specific forms within it.
So it's not that this universe is eternal, but the pattern, the cycle of universes coming and going, that's the Sanatana part.
Precisely. And that distinction is crucial. It avoids contradicting the Ashvatha idea of impermanence. It also keeps the primary quality of eternity focused on Brahman rather than the created world. Even subtle energies aren't absolutely beginningless, but the cycle itself is timeless, driven by Brahman.
That's a really subtle but important point. Okay, so moving on, the text describes Brahman's own attributes. Tat, Brahm, Amritam. What do these tell us?
These are fundamental qualities. Tat just means that. It points to Brahman as the transcendent principle, the paroksha tattva. The text also calls it Atyanta Shirakari, extremely swift in action, and Prakashaka, the illuminator of all luminous things, like the sun, stars.
Swift, illuminating. Sounds very active, very radiant. Why is it also called Shukram?
Shukram means pure, but also active, vibrant. Because Brahman is sarvavyapaka, omnipresent, it's seen as initiating all activities everywhere, simultaneously. And again, the text connects this to the Om vibrations. They're described almost like the hasta, the hand of the Supreme Lord, Parameshvara, capable of doing anything.
So Om is like the active tool, the creative force of Brahman out in the universe. Makes sense. What about Brahm itself?
Brahm simply means the greatest, infinite, in expanse, vistara, strength, bala, knowledge, jnana. In, well, everything. There's no limit. The ultimate superlative.
And the last one, Amrita, immortal. Seems straightforward.
It is, but again, there's a specific nuance. Brahman is imperishable, yes, but its inherent knowledge, strength, action, jnana, bala, kriya, these are eternally consistent. This is contrasted with Prakriti and the individual soul, the Jivatma, whose qualities fluctuate during the cosmic cycles, liberation, bondage, dissolution.
I see.
Ishwar's Brahman's attributes remain constant, whether they are actively being used for creation or not. They're just inherent and stable.
So, while everything else is in flux, Brahman's core nature is eternally steady. Okay. Then the text says, Tasman loka shrita. All realms reside within that. What counts as a loka, a realm, here?
It's used really broadly. It includes the manifested realms, prakashita, we can perceive, but also unmanifested ones, aprakashita. Even the subtle vibrations beyond what we think of as space, akasha, the very fabric of reality. The text even quotes Vedic lines like, Chandansi Vaiśākha and Ime Vailoka to show it covers everything, from the earth to the heavens and beyond.
And all these realms, manifest or not, where do they fundamentally exist?
The text is clear. Ishwara, Brahman, is the ultimate abode, the ultimate ashraya. It's the primary material cause, mulopadana karana, and the final refuge, ashraya, even for Prakriti itself. Everything ultimately rests within Brahman.
Which naturally leads to the next point, I suppose. Brahman is unsurpassable. Tadanadiyata.
Exactly. Nothing can transgress or exceed Brahman, not in any aspect, expanse, motion, strength, knowledge, nothing. And that includes Prakriti, the fundamental substance, and even the eternal individual soul. Neither can surpass Brahman.
The text uses that phrase, Anaranian Mahato Mahin.
Yes. Subtler than the subtlest, greater than the greatest. It's meant to convey this immeasurable nature. Nothing is greater than Brahman, and importantly, nothing is equal to Brahman either, which is why it's called Advaita.
Without a second. Now, that doesn't mean literally nothing else exists, right? You mentioned Prakriti, the soul.
Correct. It's not about numerical oneness in that sense.
Oh.
Advaita here means without an equal, matchless. Because its attributes are unique and unparalleled, there's simply no basis for comparison, no one to compare it to.
What does that imply?
Well, it means Brahman has no dependence on anything else. There's no object of worship superior to it, no higher controller. While other entities exist, Brahman stands unique. Absolutely unparalleled.
Right. So, to wrap it up, the entity with all these qualities, the upward root, sustainer, pure, active, greatest, immortal, the abode of all realms, the unsurpassable one.
Right.
That is Brahman. As the text says, it's Vaitas. This truly is that.
That's the core understanding from these excerpts, yes. The manifest universe comes from Prakriti, which is energized by Brahman. Prakriti runs through everything. Creation is sustained, regulated by Brahman through Om. And this universe, well, it's impermanent in its forms, but part of an eternal cycle. And beneath it all, supporting it all, is Brahman, the ultimate reality. Pure, active, immense, immortal. Everything exists within it.
Wow. Well, that was definitely a deep dive. Some incredibly profound concepts from the Adwait Brahm. We've covered quite a bit. The upward root idea, the universe's vastness, that balance between impermanence and the eternal cycle, and Brahman's unique nature. It's certainly a lot to take in.
It really is. These excerpts offer such a remarkable perspective, don't they, on where existence comes from, its fundamental nature. It really makes you think about the cosmos and, well, our place in it all.
It absolutely does. And maybe for you listening now, it sparks some thought about, the connection between the fleeting things in your own life and this underlying eternal principle we've been discussing.
Or perhaps just reflecting on that profound interconnectedness of everything. It's a beautiful idea, really, that this ancient wisdom points towards so clearly. Thank you for joining us on this exploration.
Yes, thanks for tuning in to The Deep Dive.